What's going on, wrestling fans? It is I, Steve Fall, and welcome to 10 Count. On today's edition, I am talking to the man who introduced all of us to Monday Night Raw in 1993. It's Rob Bartlett. How are you doing today?
I'm better than I was in 1993.
Why? Why?
I mean, it's no secret that I'm on the list of the top 10 worst wrestling announcers in history. I'm not number one, but there's still time to work myself
Oh,
up. So,
I would disagree because there have been a plethora of people who did not belong there and had the right, had the right look, had the suit, looked the part, but yet couldn't ever even get a wrestler's name properly correct. You supplied us with entertainment for so damn long. Let's jump back into 1993. How did you even end up in the WWF at the time? Who contacted you?
um, it's actually Mr. McMahon himself.
Wow.
I I was working on the Imus in the Morning program, which I had done for 31 years before he retired, and we were very involved. The program was very involved with Connecticut Special Olympics, and I used to do a lot of their fundraisers. I was kind of like the quote unquote celebrity auctioneer. Um, I'd basically shame all these, really rich Wall Street types into paying enormous amounts of money for, basically worthless stuff. And there was this fundraiser one evening, some banquet or, whatever it was. And there was an auction, and it was somewhere in Stamford, I think. And it was in a tent. It was outside in a tent. It was a couple hundred people. And Vince was sitting up front at a table with his lovely wife and whoever else was in his party. And he was wearing a three-piece velour peach-colored suit. And so I did basically 20 minutes just on the suit. And which, he appeared to be enjoying and laughing along with everybody else. But he was basically the foundation of my act that evening. And fine, everything went well, raised a lot of money for Connecticut Special Olympics. And then during the week, I get this. I'm heading back from the station after an Imus in the Morning show, and I get a call from Imus's um, assistant. She says, Vince McMahon called. He wants to speak with you. I thought, oh no, here it comes. There's going to be death threats. There's going to be,
Yeah.
the Steiner brothers will be waiting for me in my garage when I call, and he said, Bartlett, I'm really disappointed that you didn't appreciate the fashion sense I displayed the other night. I would like to be on live TV. I got this idea for this program called Monday Night Raw, and he explained to me the whole concept of it. And I said, and at the time my son was, I don't know, 8. I have 4 sons, but this is the first one. And he turned it okay, so we had 3 more. He was about 8 and a huge WWF fan. I had taken him to a bunch of matches. I think I took him to the match where Macho Man got married to Miss Elizabeth.
Wow.
And it was it was a father-son bonding kind of thing. And I thought, wow, this would be great. I'll get, some good seats at the shows, and my son can meet some of the wrestlers. So, and I thought it would be fun. I thought it would be, an interesting experience. And so following week, I started going up to Stamford, to the headquarters. Across it, they're on the eastern side of 95 in Stamford, the big building. And then across the parkway on the other side is this, I guess, like corporate park kind of a, deal, a lot of different buildings and whatnot. And they had their studios there. They had a whole bunch of studios, huge studios. And we went there, and they had the whole video layout, whatever. And we started doing these fake matches, not fake, I mean, these are old matches.
Yeah.
And he turned the sound down, and we would kind of, I guess go along, invent our own whatever, kind of ad lib, and Randy was there, and Vince, myself. And it was rough going at first. It was just a strange situation to be in. I didn't know a lot about, the world. I mean, I only knew what I knew through my son. It didn't appear to bother Vince that much, though. I think he kind of liked the idea that I was an outsider, because his idea, I think, was to have somebody who was used to commenting on the current events, headlines of the day, whatever, and doing comedy based on that. And because this was going to be a live program, he thought it would really, work out. So I worked with them, I don't know, 2, 3 times. We had these dry run throughs, and then came the night of the show, and I think the first words out of my mouth were something along the lines of Yokozuna, which I said Zuma because Mr. Fuji had been calling him, mispronouncing his name. So I kind of did that to kind of point it out, because I thought that was kind of funny. And I said, he's got an ass the size of an amphitheater, Vince. And you could hear in Vince's voice his retort, which mostly was like, well, I don't know about that, but I know about this. This is Monday Night Raw. He always like reflect whatever it was that I'd said. And I knew from there it was going to be downhill. And for the next 13 weeks, that was kind of the story. It just that's how it happened.
Wow. So you're talking about having tryouts, and I guess in late 92, because obviously in January 93 is when this all goes down. So you must have been
Yeah,
making
I
fun
mean,
of Vince McMahon in the summer of 92, right? You're in the tent, so it couldn't have been
I think it was,
winter
yeah, I think it
time.
was like the fall of '92, and then we met a few times over that course.
Hmm.
I think what was the premiere? It was like the 13th or something
Yeah, I
in
think
January.
either the 13th or the 11th of January. So yeah, of 93. So it's pretty early
It,
on.
it happened relatively quickly. I mean, it might have even happened, you know, I mean, that we started doing these run throughs in January. I
Oh
don't
wow,
recall it
early.
being, so I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't think there was a lot of time between the run throughs and the actual first show. But it was interesting. It was a very different world, and I grew to gain much and still have much respect for Vince, because he knows his audience. He's a genius when it comes to programming for his audience. I mean, he's the P.T. Barnum of our age. I've said that a number of times before, but he
Yes.
really is. I mean, he knows what the people want, except for that one time when he made the mistake of, casting me.
Ah,
Um,
no, 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 no. Don't you ever say that about yourself. I loved your references of what was happening in today's world, because in a lot of times they try to shoehorn that crap in and it sounds so fed. But you
yeah,
dropping in those little dimes of knowledge, or your Mike Tyson's impressions, or Elvis, or even dressing as Vince, I think those moments stick out more to me because they felt real versus someone being like, you have to talk about this celebrity that did this crazy, like Will Smith slapping someone. We have to talk about Will Smith. We have just find a way to put it in there. You, on the other hand, it just fell in there naturally for me.
to Vince's credit, he never like gave me specific orders about what to do. He pretty much gave me free reign. I mean, sometimes he would give me kind of an idea, Dr. Clown's gonna come by with a pie, just to give you a little bit of a heads up. Um, the night Sensational Sherry and Luna Vachon had the big knockdown, drag out fight. Oh, they're gonna tear your clothes off. It's just, not a lot of notice, but at least he gave me some notice.
Right. It'd be a
Um,
little awkward having your clothes just ripped off out of nowhere.
that that particular show was one of my favorites, because I ran off. It's my patented finishing move was running from the arena in fear, and which I kind of invented at Madison Square Garden for about. It was an interview. I interviewed Giant Gonzalez in the ring, sold out Madison Square Garden, and Harvey Whippleman was trashing New York City, and I was defending New York City, and then I made some comment about the fake fur coat that Giant Gonzalez was wearing, and it was a thyroid case, and he gave me the Spock pitch and forced me down to my knees, and then that's where I invented the patented finishing move of running from the ring screaming, and so I brought that back, but I ran out. We were at the Mid Hudson Civic Arena, because I think 1 week a month the Manhattan Center wasn't available, so
Mm.
we were at the remote, which is in Poughkeepsie, I think, and when I ran out, I went to the makeup room, and I said to the makeup artist, a lovely lady by the name of Sharon, said, "Can you make me look, like I've just been beaten up?" And she gave me the black eye, and I tore my shirt, and she gave me a little bit of a bloody nose, and I came staggering out, and spent the rest of the match dressed like that. But my favorite was the one that you mentioned where I imitated Vince. Um,
Yes, yes. So
I
is
did,
he clued in on this? Is he involved with this, or you
no,
just show up dressed as Vince one
no,
day?
no. See, this was the thing. Normally, like at the Manhattan Center, for example, there would be a pre-show meeting about an hour or so before camera, where he would discuss, the format, who was wrestling, how it was going to go, whatever little things, there'll be a promo for this and there'll be something for that, and we have a headlock on hunger promo here. There'll be some Ico Pro references. There's all these, different things you go through it, and then this was a week that he was getting an award for the charitable work that the WWF at the time was doing, which is something that they continue to do to this day. I mean, and they don't really make a big deal about it. It's like I wasn't aware that they had done this when I was working with them, because it was almost like it was a foregone conclusion
Yeah,
that this is what was expected of you if you worked for the WWF, if you worked for Vince, you had to dedicate a certain amount of your time to doing these charity events, or I mean, they go to hospitals every single week, children's hospitals. They go to orphanages. They go, the amount of time and effort they spend, and it's mostly kids' charities, just making appearances and sitting with the kids and talking to them, and letting them hold the belts and signing autographs, and taking pictures. So, I mean, they really do. I've never really been involved with an organization that is that dedicated towards giving back to the community. He was winning an award for that, and Macho Man was going with him. I guess he was going to be introducing Vince when Vince made his speech, whatever. So Bobby the Brain Heenan and Gorilla Monsoon, to the late greats, were going to be taking Vince's place and Randy's place. And I think I might have ran it past Kevin Dunn, the producer. I don't remember if I did or not. But I asked Sharon, the makeup girl, if she can make me look like Vince, and she thought she could and give me extra big lips. And I rented a tuxedo and got some shoulder pads. And, you know, you know, Vince has got, shoulders like an aircraft carrier. I mean,
yes.
he's built like a diamond. I mean, and and I just decided that I was really not going to do anything other than make fun of the way he spoke. So the impression was really me talking a lot of gibberish, but in that tone. It would
Yeah.
be Monday Night Raw, and I just repeated that for the entire show, much to Gorilla Monsoon's bemusement, confusion, and I have to say a fair amount of anger. He
Mm,
was not all that happy with my impression. Heenan, on the other hand, thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen in his life, um, and played into it. Meanwhile, the two of them together were an amazing, amazing comedy team. They could have been like the Abbott and Costello, but they were
they
really
were.
like the Abbott and Costello. They had such great chemistry together, and two lovely guys, especially Bobby. Bobby was very, very special man. He could not have been sweeter, kinder, more welcoming to me. Um, I'm just plugging in my laptop here. The
No, it's
battery's
all
going.
good.
Um, and Randy, the two of them could not be more welcoming or supportive, or I mean, Randy said, "What do you need, brother? What can I do for you?" He was all like, you know, you can make fun of me if you want. Oh yeah, I mean, he really whatever would help me out. And Bobby was the same way. I mean, Bobby would invite me down to Florida to visit him at home.
Wow.
I mean, just really, really people. And to a person, I mean, everyone I met were just really incredibly lovely people. I mean, Bam Bam Bigelow, here's this 400-pound biker with flame tattoos and his bald head, and called me sir. It was like you could not find, more gentlemen, and ladies, than the people who worked for Vince. And but making fun of Vince was one of my favorites. And The following week, we were back at Manhattan Center, and it was the pre-show meeting, and everyone, because everyone went crazy for it. Like the crew went nuts because
Yeah.
no one had ever dared make fun of Vince before, and I had really nothing to lose. I kind of knew that I wasn't going to be there much longer, so I figured I'd go for it. And everyone just thought it was the greatest, and so I show up, and then you can see the wrestlers are kind of looking down and smiling, and they don't want to say anything, and they're just kind of there's nod, and so we're all in the room for the pre-show meeting, and Vince walks in, and there's a hush. It's just the place goes silent. And he walks in and he just stares at me. He goes, "What? You're fired!" The place goes nuts. So the following week or 2 weeks later, I show up Manhattan Center for the show, and there's nobody there. There's a cameraman. The entire place is empty. Nobody in the stands. Empty.
Huh.
And they got a camera, and they're shooting me on camera. They were up and they didn't tell me that they were moving the venue, and set it up so that he could play this joke on me, and that's how he got me back for the impression. So
Wow.
yeah, he's
Ah, ah.
a practical joker on his own, I gotta say.
Oh my God. A vengeful but funny man as well. What's it like working though next to Vince McMahon? Because again, you're there, you're saying these things that maybe he's not prepared for, but yet you're live on air, sometimes tape, but yet you are there live doing this. He can't just say, "Hey, don't say that," because you've already said it. Like you can't edit something out that's
Yeah,
live.
he never gave me any crap about it. He never, I never got scolded. I was never told not to do something or not to say something, or if I said something that he didn't particularly care for, there was never any, admonishment for it. He was, you know, he really believed in letting me do what I did, and I think he just kind of hoped that eventually I would catch on. And, I started to, when it became apparent that I was not popular, I tried to think about how I can make myself, turn myself into a heel, if that would help, you know. Of course, I didn't know what a heel was prior to working for the WWF, but I started gaining all this knowledge once I was there. Um, and I think Vince thought that the best way of approaching it would just be to like make sure I was being humiliated at every chance. So that's when, I said I was going to be Elvis one week just to do something different, and got this, unbelievable Elvis wig and the glasses and the jacket, and that was the week that Vince decided I was going to get a pie in the face from Doink the Clown, and so I spent 3/4 of the show with shaving cream all over my face. Um, but that worked. I think the humiliation part I think really worked. It was good. People seem to enjoy it. But what's funny is that in retrospect now, I get these invitations from guys like yourself who do these wrestling podcasts, and there is no greater fan than a wrestling fan. I mean, you guys could not be more loyal or fervent in your admiration for this form of sporting entertainment. And it's almost like in retrospect, people are like, I don't know if they got it. I don't know if they changed their minds about what I was at the time, but I think they kind of like the idea that I own up to the fact that I was, you know, a fish out of water, behind the desk.
Yeah.
And so I'm enjoying this kind of like a, wrestling renaissance of my my 13 weeks with the
Your love.
WWF.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
you brought it up earlier. You're saying, oh, you're on the top 10 list of worst commentary. No, the thing is, though, you were aware of what you were there to do. There are some people who showed up there who are trying to be like as serious as possible and doing the job that like Michael Cole now does perfectly. Like they were trying to deliver the stories, the pay-per-views, get these dates in, talk about hunger. You said Headlock for Hunger is what they used to call their charity events. So all these things, but you were there doing your bits. Some people who were trying as hard as they could kept screwing up over and over. You didn't screw up over and over. That's the thing. So I don't want you to ever to think that you're on a top 10 list of the worst. You're definitely on a good list of if the top 10 worst, you're 10. Okay, you're not 1, you're 10.
You're very kind. You're very, very kind. I thought there were a couple of people worse than me. I don't want to, name any names off the head, but
I
you
got
know,
name plenty, but I'm not going to either.
so
We don't have to do that here, but honestly, I think what you were there to do is what you were there to do, and you did it perfectly. But again, you mentioned working with next to Vince McMahon, Macho Man. You said he was so open to you working with him, but then you also said you weren't. You said you weren't feeling very popular. Were there people backstage? Because I know it's very protective of letting in outsiders into the world that they live in.
no, they could not. No one could be more welcoming
Okay,
than
good.
they were. And I didn't get anything. I mean, I got teased. Razor Ramon used to break my chaps all the time. The Steiner brothers, I remember one of them sat on my lap and the other one pinched my Adam's apple, um, to the point where I thought I was going to pass out.
Uh,
But it was all in good fun. There was never anything mean
okay.
spirited or nasty or went out of their way to make me feel bad. Like I said, if anything, they were really kind. I mean, Nature Boy. I mean, Ric Flair was, you know, again, call me sir. It was like, these legends were very,
Uh,
very kind, very kind, very, very together, very, I think Sensational Sherry, made a pass at me after the
well,
show.
who wouldn't? Who wouldn't? Let's be honest. Even Yokozuna might. I don't know.
No,
Maybe. If he sat on you like the Steiner brothers did, I don't think you'd have legs, but that's just an
yeah,
observation.
no,
That's an
no,
observation. But Hulk Hogan, though,
the
came
ass like a
back to the company.
yes.
Hulk Hogan came back to the
He,
company
he,
while you were there. And that's like, this was monumental because he was gone for so long because of steroids becoming this big thing in the wrestling world. So they pushed him out so they could let him go do movies and let him, hide away for a little bit. He came back. Now you're there. Are you talking to him?
Mhm.
Because this is the
Yeah.
wrestler who put wrestling on the map.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. He was there, and again, nice, kind, supportive. We talked about his movies, because obviously I taken my son to see, Mr. Nanny and
Of course.
what was the one where he was
Was it Suburban
chef, some
Commando?
Urban Commando, and again, he was really, really nice to me. I had no reason to be. He could have played a big time Hollywood star and looked down his nose, but he wasn't. He was very, very welcoming. And then I saw him again later, when he was a guest on Imus. I used to do him as a character on Imus. I would do Hulk Hogan, and it was basically threats on whoever was in the news at the time, but it was, Congressman Weiner, whoever it was all threats from Hulk. There were just these rants that would go on and on. There's a couple of them I think up on YouTube, and he knew that I did that, and he was on the show the day after the video broke of him with that guy that DJ from Chicago, Mancow, was it Mancow,
Yeah,
had
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of done a little honeypot sting and had this videotape of him and Mancow's wife.
Yeah.
And he just looked defeated. I mean, my heart broke for him. He was so defeated by it. He was so hurt, like personally hurt by it. I got the feeling he was, and so I really felt bad for him, because deep down I thought he was a nice guy,
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there's a lot of that in this wrestling world where, obviously, in any world, people love to tear people down for whatever reason because of either jealousy or just whatever. But then the story of the rise back up, Americans love that for some strange reason. We love to
yeah,
tear you down, then go, well, we teared you down, but we'll also build you back up. But we're going to wait a little bit. It happens with so
yeah,
many celebrities. It's,
oh
it's,
sure,
it's so crazy. It happens with so many, like Britney Spears is one that comes to my mind of like, let's tear her down, then bring her back up on our chord when we think it's okay, not when you want to get back in the real world. But Macho Man, you did mention how he was so open and welcoming, and there's so many stories of Macho Man over the years of the wrestler versus the real person. You obviously interacted with both. Which one do you feel like was more welcoming, the real person or the character?
oh, the real person. I mean, and although the character was supportive, he never really said anything, nasty or whatever. But I think the position of the character was more like, I don't know who this guy is or what he's doing, but Vince wants him here, so I'm gonna treat him with some respect. So I don't think he ever, I think it would have been funny actually if he had taken a more, acrimonious take and been short with me or threatened me, whatever, I think that could have been funny, and it would have been great if there was a little bit of, friction between the two of us on either
Yeah.
side of Vince, you know. But no, I mean, it's he could look mean, he could sound mean, but he was a pussycat, I mean, he really, really, really was, he'd been really hurt by Miss Elizabeth,
Yeah.
they had gotten, I think, divorced before I started with them. And that was the only topic that was off limits. That was the only thing that I was told to stay away from. And of course, I'm going to beat up a guy for his problems with his wife, so I obeyed that for sure. And they wouldn't have had to tell me because I wouldn't have really thought to go there for that reason, knowing that behind the scenes he was also very wounded by that. So
Yeah. Smart.
um,
Smart decision.
I mean, and I was incredibly sad when Bobby passed and when Randy, was in an awful accident,
Yeah.
and all these guys who I knew, and Luna and Sherry and all these people who I knew in life had died much too young. I know some of it is definitely from the illicit substances that they used to use to bulk up, and but in Randy's case, Randy was a really talented baseball player.
Yeah.
He was going to be in the NBA, you know, MLB rather.
Yeah. 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 Now you
He
brought it
ended up
up.
being,
Did you ever see something like that? 'Cause I've talked to so many people, like even Sean Mooney. I interviewed. He pretty much told me to talk to you as well. So I love Sean Mooney, and he brought it up too. The people who he was friends with and interacted with no longer here because of issues. Demons
mm-hmm,
is what wrestling fans usually call them. And with you
mm-hmm,
being there for a short amount of time, January to April '93, but that is when like things are leveling up. There's no more steroids, and out in the open. But yet there obviously are people doing something. They're drugs,
mm-hmm.
marijuana at the time, obviously not legal, and still in this world, some states don't have it legal. But like, are you seeing this abuse happening? Because that's what really in the 2000s you just see a drop off of so many wrestlers passing away because of past mistakes.
Yeah. I never witnessed any of that. I mean, I don't know, you know, what they did off on their own in the privacy of whatever. I mean, everything was pretty open. It wasn't like there was any place that they could go to hide to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw anything. The only thing that I saw being abused was the Icopo bars in the catering table. It was always grilled chicken, a steamed vegetable, and pasta without sauce at every single show. That was the backstage catering, and
Wow.
and a huge bowl, Icopro bars, um, which, by the way, had the consistency and flavor of caulk. It was like wood caulk. It was supposed to be like Turkish taffy, but it was really kind of hideous. But
Wow.
uh,
I've
that. I just assumed that was why everyone was so muscular, was because they were on the IcoPro diet. But
It makes sense.
the one person that I found the most interesting was the Undertaker,
Mm.
because I would show up and I would go to the meeting room, whatever, just kind of walk around and see the guys, chat up and whatever, kind of warm up before the show, and Undertaker would already have been there, and he would be in costume. He would have the hat off, but he would be sitting in a corner. And when I say sitting, I mean his back was up against the wall, but he was in a squat position, so his feet were flat on the ground, and his head was down, and the hair was in his face, and he stayed like that for as long as it took before the show began. And it wasn't until like his match was about to happen, they would say, you're on. He would slowly get up and put the hat on and walk out. It was like this guy was in character from the time he got out of the car in the parking lot
Wow.
until he went on into the ring, which I always thought was a kind of a cool thing. That was the commitment he had to that character, was that he he was scary. You didn't want to mess with that guy. He was really, really scary.
That's an interesting you say that because for so long he protected like that character. You get out of his car, he'd be in character on a bus, autograph signings, character. And then last year I went
Mhm.
to like the Undertaker one man show. Well, he's just telling road stories and talking like a normal person,
Oh
and it's
wow.
shocking. It's
Yeah, yeah, because he never
it's
revealed any of that.
yeah. So now we every month when the WWE goes to an event, like I was in Los Angeles for WrestleMania, you hate a one man show. You go to I was in Toronto. Boom, one man show. Texas, one man show. The man's just sharing everything now, but for years, you're telling me this guy's sitting backstage in character for
Yeah,
hours, getting
yeah.
in that mindset of like, I don't know, zombie killer.
And in that position, I mean, I don't know how you're in a squat with your feet on the ground for 3 hours. I mean, it just was like
Wow.
amazing. It was like he was almost like torturing himself before he went to the ring. It was like maybe it helped him get into character was to put himself through pain and discomfort.
I guess so. Maybe he always wants to feel like he's a dead man, so he's
Yeah, right.
putting himself in pain, which is very interesting. You did bring up Bobby Heenan and how he was so welcoming as well, because on TV, the first episode of Raw, Vince McMahon describes that like, well, Rob Bartlett's inside, but Bobby Heenan's outside. And for a long time, WWF fans, Bobby Heenan was the guy doing commentary for Superstars or wrestling challenges on Saturdays and Sunday mornings. But yet here you are, new face, and boom, Bobby's on the outs. You brought up Bobby was very welcoming. On TV,
Mhm.
I imagine, you know, he's thinking, well, is this my spot being stolen by someone else? Is this going to be a new thing where I'm just going to be like the butt of the joke and Rob gets everything going? That wasn't the case at all for you two?
No, not in real life. I mean, that might have been what Vince was trying to
Right.
suggest, because I'm sure Vince was one of the ones who came up with the idea of doing that, of isolating Bobby in favor of me. And I think that the idea was that we would kind of go at each other to the point where, and Bobby was so nice to me that when we actually did eventually work together in that one show when I played Vince McMahon, he he wasn't nasty to me on the air. He wasn't, because in a way, he was enjoying me getting on Vince, because that's not something that he could ever really do,
Right.
But he was as supportive as anyone could be, and he actually played into it. He referred to me as Vince McMahon. He didn't try to break my character. He
Yeah.
kind of used that improvisation rule of yes and it's like never negate anything. You got to go with it. Which is why I say he could have been a stand-up and he could have been a comedy team with Gorilla. I mean, the chemistry between the two of them, and Heenan was a really, really funny guy. He had a
Yes.
great sense of humor. He had a silly center. He liked to play pranks and jokes on people, and just a great guy.
Good to hear. Because, yeah, you've heard stories over the years of wrestlers in wrestling. You always hear, well, the outsider's here and he's going to take my spot, take food off my table, take food out of my children's mouths. And yet, clearly, Bobby Heenan was the person we all have heard stories of over the years. Super nice person.
Yeah, and I don't know. There may have been, animosity between wrestlers themselves. I was never witness to any of that, but I'm
Hmm.
sure, like anything else, you want to be the favorite child, and when someone else gets more attention for a little bit, you got to feel it's a sibling rivalry for sure.
Right.
So, excuse me. Um, but I don't think Bobby was smart enough to know that I was not a threat. I was nobody who was going to be taking anything away from him. And he was up for anything. He would do whatever he could to make a story or a joke work. I mean, he dressed up in drag, for crying out loud,
He did everything. Yeah.
and a rabbi. I mean, he went the distance. There was nothing he wouldn't do. If he thought that it was going to be good for the show.
Wait a
Which
minute.
is
That wasn't Bobby Heenan in drag. That was his aunt, and that was his rabbi. I don't know what you're
like
trying to pull here, Rob, on me, but that wasn't Bobby.
Vince, Vince, for whatever reason, and I don't know why this is, Vince was convinced I was Jewish, and
Yeah.
that's why he had Heenan dressed as a rabbi. I don't know if he just assumed that all stand-up comedians are Jewish, but whenever I've done any, most of the time in acting, I get cast as, you know, the heavy set character, normally a Jewish guy. I mean, I was Mr. Mushnick in Little Shop of Horrors, and I was the guy who owned the dance hall in Sweet Charity, and all these parts that Stubby K would have, or what's that other guy? There's another character actor who played those kinds of parts all the time. So maybe that, like a Catholic schoolboy from Brooklyn and then Long Island. So the fact that I played these Jewish characters. When I was in Law and Order SVU, I was Milton Schoenfeld. When I was on The Good Wife, it was Bukovitz. So
Wow.
the only time I did a Jewish guy was when I was on the last season of Elementary. I got to play police captain who was filling in for Aidan Quinn, because Aidan Quinn had gotten shot in the storyline, and so for a couple of episodes I ran the precinct, and I was what's his name? Oh, Dwyer. Bill Dwyer, Captain Bill Dwyer. That was the only time, they cast me as an Irish cop rather than a Jewish cop.
So
But,
so
but
Vince
it's
so Vince set
ridiculous.
you down a path. Vince is the one who made
Yeah,
Hollywood believe that you were Jewish.
basically, he set up my. I actually owe him for that. He set up my film and TV and
Outstanding to hear. Though there were pay-per-views at the time while you were there, but there weren't many. There was like 4 a year. They added 5 in 1994. But were there ever conversations of adding you to other commentary? Because again, there's Superstars, there's Wrestling Challenges on Saturdays, there's pay-per-views. Those are on Sundays. You could have been around for Royal Rumble 93 and WrestleMania 9, which is in Caesar's Palace. So you were around, but was there ever discussion, or you're going to be this guy on Monday Night Raw because it's going to be Raw, so we need Rob Bartlett to do that?
no, no, there was never any talk of me going anywhere else but the Manhattan Center and once a month, the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, because I think it was clear that the little control they had over me in town, there'd be no control over me if we were out on the road. So,
Mm.
and I think when it was a pay-per-view event, I think he, people were actually paying, reaching into their pockets. He didn't want to do anything to make them want to have their money given back. So I was on free TV. I was on USA Network because they weren't paying for that. But the pay-per-views never happened. Although Kevin Dunn, the producer, now he's a vice president. He's gone up
Oh,
the
he's up
ranks
there. He
considerably.
is up there. Yeah.
The big time guy. He's another terrific guy. He was kind of like my liaison. Vince would tell him to arrange for whatever, or give me the heads up of what was happening. If it wasn't by Vince at the actual venue, Kevin would talk, and Kevin would send me tapes of the shows every week to watch. So I have this whole library of these tapes. It's just without the commercials, but it's just everything that we shot. And he wanted to develop other things. He wanted to go in a direction that was using the wrestlers as something else. Like he wanted a wrestling sitcom. And so I
Mm.
wrote a pilot for him called The Turnbuckles, which was about a family of wrestlers. And, the bed was a ring, in the master bedroom, the bed was a ring. And then I had written a treatment for a Saturday Night Live type show, which would be sketches featuring all the different wrestlers. It was a Cadillac, or it was some car company that had a commercial where they rolled a ball bearing down, and it kind of went all over the contours of the car. And I wrote a sketch for Yokozuna where I had the ball bearing going all around him,
Yeah.
and on and down, and it slipped down the back of his diaper, as I used to call it. And then that would make him go like this and charge. So it was like, and so I was gonna have somebody else jump on his back when that happened, and then he could carry him. Well, stupid, like a cross between Laugh-In and Saturday Night Live. And when I called Kevin to say, that I thought it was probably in everyone's better interest that I leave the show, he was really disappointed. He was like, "Oh no, man! I wanted to do the sitcom. I wanted to." He was very sorry to see me go. He didn't want me to leave, but I just kind of felt that it was in everybody's best interest that I take my leave.
Now, why do you feel
and
like
move on.
that though? Why do you feel like you were there for January till April of '93? Why do you feel like it was the right time, or you not even the right time? You should just leave.
Yeah, I didn't think it was working. I didn't feel I was adding anything to it. And in many ways, I kind of saw myself, especially when I watched the tapes back. I would like put the brakes on it. I'm trying to interject things to be funny, and it would just stop things cold. And it kind of ruined the flow of the program. I mean, it was a great idea to have somebody like that, but it didn't work. And the way it didn't work is he's never had anybody since. There'd be 1,000 other guys he could have slipped into that. Another guy who did the same. He could have had Jackie the Joke Man because he did for Howard what I used to do for Imus. He could have had a whole slew of other people. Um, but I think he realized that it just wasn't a good fit. You know, so and I didn't want to be in a position where it became obvious to everybody that it wasn't working. I figured I would, with some dignity, and call it quits on my own. And I mean, I think they got a week or two of jokes out of it, which were great. Um, I've never been asked to any of the anniversaries, sadly,
Huh.
because I always thought it would have been funny to have me back and be have me be as awful as I was, now as a bearded, gray-haired man. Back and I look at what a puppy I was back then. Um, I thought that would always that would kind of look cool, if I was brought back into the fold. But there's no hard feelings on my end for sure.
Well, I think they need to bring you back because it seems like everybody else has been. Sean Mooney's been brought back. Todd Pettengill has been brought back. Anyone who is still alive who can return has returned. And I think we need to make this happen somehow. The next, 30th, 40th, 50th, whatever anniversary they're pulling off, because they celebrate so many things. It's like celebrating your birthday every other week. I don't know what celebration is this? Taco Day? Oh, okay. Let's bring in Rob for Taco Day. Yeah. I think it needs to happen.
Uh, and
That's me.
I've stumbled across these wrestling sites, and I'll see on Instagram or TikTok or Twitter. There's a bunch of fans who do podcasts based on wrestling, whatever, and every once in a while I'll get an email from somebody saying, well, they mentioned you on old school wrestling. Those guys from Ireland who do
Yeah,
the
yeah,
OSW podcast, and so I listened to one of them, I and it happened to be they were talking. It was I think they were talking about the first episode of Raw, and then they were just describing it, and then it was just I don't know if you use foul language on this
we
program,
do.
so I'll oh okay. They were talking. How do we have Vince McMahon? He's there obviously, and then we have Macho Man Randy Savage in a way that we normally wouldn't find Macho Man Randy Savage. And then the camera pans over to who the hell is this cunt? And the next hour just unloaded on me. And I loved it, And so I contacted them and I said, I heard it. I loved it. This is great. And they had me on as a guest. I did a little pre-tape thing for them. I guess they have like a segment where there's a quiz, so
Yeah.
like your question, whatever. And I was hosting that part of the show. And then there's Brian Alvarez. I forget the name
Oh
of his
yeah.
podcast out on the West Coast. They had a Rob Bartlett appreciation show where they had people write poems and songs about me on the program, and they interviewed me, which was really kind. I found out about that they were doing a Rob Bartlett day for my son because he's actually come back to being a huge wrestling fan now, and he's kind of bringing along his daughter. She just turned 4. My
Oh,
granddaughter just turned
nice.
4. He's
Congratulations.
he's kind of spoon feeding her a little bit, and they're about to have another. They're going to have a boy this time, and I can just see the heir to the throne. He's going to be spoon fed some of these wrestling things because Sean still wears the wrestling T-shirts and but Sean was one who said, yeah, they're doing a Rob Bartlett Appreciation Day. And so I contacted Brian and they had me on. And then I was back on with them at Christmas time. I did the 12 Days of Wrestling song parody.
Wow.
Um, which was fun.
We all love
Yeah, but
you.
I mean the fans were great. The fans have been great, and everyone seems to enjoy the fact that, I don't have a bitter taste in my mouth about what happened, and
Mm.
I get hammered and I love it. I just think it's great. That because I'm telling you, the wrestling fans, there's nothing like a wrestling fan, man. There's no sport. I mean, even Trekkies, even like people like that, Doctor Who fans or Harry Potter fans, or nothing compares to a wrestling fan. I mean, you guys are just rabid. It's like you foam at the mouth, and it's all ages. It's
Oh yeah,
literally it's all ages.
yeah.
Like guy my age on down to like 4-year-old kids are wrestling fans. So there's something there. But the kind of people that it attracts, I think, is interesting because you are so loyal.
We are very dedicated to what we love. And we love you,
Yeah.
Rob. So just want to say this has
Um,
been an honor and a privilege talking to you. You started off the show by saying you're on the top 10 worst. I disagree. Top 10 best in my book, folks. Top 10 best in my book. All right. The man was next to Vince McMahon. He dressed up as Vince McMahon. He hung out with Macho Man. You got to be with gods and greats like Grill Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. So in all, you rub shoulders with the Angels, and I gotta say, it's been a pleasure sitting here talking to you today on 10 Count, talking about everything. Folks, the history books will always show that you were on the first episode of Monday Night Raw. And what does that mean to you? That's the final question here. What does that mean? Because the history books will always try to be rewritten as time goes on, but they can never rewrite the first episode of Monday Night Raw where your face is there. What does that mean?
well, I mean, it's only part of the story. I mean, I don't know why I've never gotten credit for discovering the Salk vaccine, but it's great. I'm proud of it. And I make sure that it's not something I ever hide. I'm proud of it. And when I look at all the crazy things I've done in my career, TV, film, radio, Broadway, uh, and wrestling. It's just it's a great it's a great story. And I'm very proud of it. And it was a lot of fun. It was a lot
Outstanding.
of fun and good memories. And sadly, I miss the guys who I worked with.
Yeah. Time will get us all, but right now we're with you, and I appreciate all the time you give me today. I've been Steve Ball. He's been Rob Bartlett. This has been 10 Count. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye
Oh,
bye.
yeah.